You know, sometimes the quietest things end up making the biggest noise. Today, we're going to dive into a small collection of ancient poems that did just that. They completely changed the game for literature.
Just listen to that for a second. It's so simple, right? But it's absolutely packed with this heavy feeling of distance. You can almost picture it. Someone watching a loved one just disappear over the horizon, maybe forever. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A revolution from just a couple of lines? It sounds like a stretch, but I promise you, it's true. These poems weren't just a small step forward. They were a giant leap in what poetry was even for and what it could do. So, to really get this revolution, we've got to look at the feeling that's right at the heart of it. This wasn't poetry about epic battles or legendary heroes. Nope, it was about something much, much more personal.
That poem we just heard, it's all about that gut-wrenching pain of being apart. In other poems in this collection, they dig into the sadness of getting older, of time just slipping through your fingers. This kind of thoughtful, almost sad mood, well, it was brand new at the time, and it's what really makes these poems stand out.
Okay, so who wrote these incredible, game-changing poems? Well, here's the crazy part. We don't really know.
The collection is called, pretty straightforwardly, the 19 Old Poems, and they're a big deal because they're the earliest group of poems we have that all follow a specific style. We're talking way back in the later Han Dynasty. And the authors? Totally anonymous. Their names are just gone. The best guess from scholars is that they were poets hanging out in the capital city, Luoyang, and what they created together ended up being basically the bedrock of lyric poetry.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the engine behind this revolution. Because the big change wasn't just what they were writing about, but how they were writing it. These poets were working with a completely new set of rules, a new blueprint for poetry.
This new form is called penta-syllabic poetry. And yeah, it's pretty much what it sounds like. Penta for 5. Every single line has exactly 5 characters, or 5 syllables. It sounds like a small change, but trust me, the effect it had on the rhythm and the entire feel of poetry was huge.
So here's the basic recipe for one of these poems. You've got that strict 5-character rule for every line, but you could have as many lines as you wanted, and those lines were usually paired up into couplets, 2-line stanzas. The rhyme would almost always hit at the end of the second line in that pair. So you get this really cool mix of strict rules and creative freedom. It's solid, but it's also flexible.
And man, you can really hear the difference this rule made. See, before these poems, the standard was a 4-character line. It has this very predictable, steady beat. Think of it like a drum, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you add that 5th character, it breaks things up. It forces a little pause in the line, creating this more interesting 2+3 rhythm. All of a sudden, poetry stopped marching, and it started to flow. It felt more natural, more like breathing.
So, you've got this brand new flowing poetic form. What do you do with it? Well, these poets used it to tackle one of the biggest, oldest questions we all face. Between heaven and earth is man's life, rushing like a traveler with a long way to go. Wow, that's a core idea in these poems. Life is short. We're just passing through, Like we're on this long, rushed road trip, and we don't even know where we're going. There's a real sadness in that, isn't there? But it wasn't all doom and gloom. The poets didn't just sit around feeling sad. They had an answer. Faced with this short, fleeting life, their response was basically, live it. Why not take a candle and go out wandering, seek out pleasure while there is time? I mean, that's pretty clear, right? If the day isn't long enough, light a candle and keep the party going. It's a total seize the day kind of vibe. And that's the beautiful push and pull you feel throughout these poems. They're not giving you any easy answers. They're looking right at the deep sadness of how short life is, but in the very next breath, they're telling us to grab onto whatever joy we can find in the time we've got.
So you take these new poetic rules, you take these deep themes, and you put them together. What you get is the single biggest change of all, a complete rethinking of what poetry is even for.
Let's do a little before and after to see how big this change was. Before, you had things like folk songs. They were performed out loud to a crowd. The poet was basically a storyteller, talking about things that happened out there. But these poems, they were different. They were written down, designed to be read silently by yourself. And the focus totally flipped. It wasn't about telling a story anymore. It was about exploring a feeling on the inside. The poet's own mind, their own heart, that became the main event.
And you really can't overstate how important this shift from speaking to writing was. Think about it. When you're performing for a crowd, you have to keep the energy up, keep them hooked. But when you're writing for a silent reader, you can slow down. The reader can pause, think, reread a line. It lets you go so much deeper into your own feelings. It's just a totally different experience.
And that's the big takeaway. That's the legacy. For the first time, really, the poet's own feelings weren't just part of the poem, they were the poem. It was a complete turn inward, a huge moment of self-reflection for literature itself. So when you look at it all together, these unknown poets with their simple 5-character lines and their deep thoughts on sadness and time, they did so much more than just write 19 nice poems. They created a whole new voice for literature, a voice that was quiet, personal, and thoughtful. A voice that, for the first time, could really start to explore the incredible, complicated world inside the human soul.